What's up, guys? This is Chris from Honest Outlaw here, and today we're going to be looking at the all-new Smith Wesson CSX, a micro double-stack pistol, new for 2022. Now, before we do that, though, I want to mention my Patreon supporters. As always, thank you guys very much. I purchased this gun with the Patreon dollars. If you want to support the channel, that is the best way to do it. There's a link in the description below. Just feel free to sign up. Also, in that description is a link to a local shelter in Ames, Iowa. It's the YSS. I would really appreciate you guys going down there and hitting that link and donate a couple bucks to those kids. They could really use your help. Now, the Smith Wesson CSX made quite the splash this year because they took the most popular style of gun of the last few years and put quite an interesting twist on it. So as you can see here, this is it right here. This is a 3-inch barrel 9mm pistol with a single action design with a manual safety with a capacity of 10 plus 1 or 12 plus 1 depending on which magazine you decide to use. Both magazines come with the gun right out of the box. Now there's a couple of things that make this different than something like the M&P Shield Plus or maybe the SIG P365. Similar in size, of course, maybe a little bit thicker grip, but the first big change that they've done, besides the manual safety, is obviously the all aluminum grip here. Most, if not all, the Micro 9s that I've ever seen come with polymer frame, and that's to reduce the overall weight to help with carry. Smith & Wesson wanted to make this a little bit more shootable, so they added an ounce or two to the grip to make it more shootable, and they certainly have done that, which we'll show in the footage. The other thing they did was make it a single action design similar to that of a 2011 or 1911. Now technically it's not a 1911 because it's double stack, and technically it's not a 2011 because it does have a solid lower frame. A 2011 is a grip, a frame, and then a slide. So this is more of a double stack 1911 style 9mm subcompact micro pistol. Wow, quite the mouthful, but it is what it is. Now there's a lot of cool features on this and some features that I don't like that we'll get into. As I said, 3-inch barrel is good for carry, but not a lot of velocity on those 9mm rounds. We have really good sights, white dot serrated sights, which Smith & Wesson is very famous for. These similar sights to the Shield, the M&Ps, and all that stuff. We have really well done front and rear slide serrations. And then, of course, if you're unfamiliar with the single action design, the gun has to be cocked and locked to operate successfully. Flip the manual safety off, defeat the trigger safety, pull the trigger, and the gun will fire. Now, if the gun is not cocked and locked, nothing will happen. But when you do shoot the first round, the gun will cycle, and then you can continue firing in single action mode. Now, one of the nice things that they've done to this pistol that's kind of new is that the gun will cycle the slide with the manual safety engaged. So if you're carrying this pistol and when you're done with it for the day, if you don't want to drop that manual safety, if that makes you feel weird, you can eject the shell in there, or if you're clearing malfunctions or anything like that, you can put the safety on and then clear the malfunctions if you want. So that gives you some options there, and I do like that a lot. The gun has 2 safeties. Now that's one thing to keep in mind. The manual safety over here is ambi, so right or left-handed people can use it. The slide release is right or left-handed. That's very nice as well. And then the magazine release is swappable, so if you're left-handed, you can also use that. This here is the trigger safety, which we'll get into here in a little bit. It is quite a point of controversy of this gun. Down here is the all aluminum frame with the polymer inserts. So this is actually an insert here, and I have seen this fail in a couple videos, including Nothing Fancy's video. I saw one of these fall out, although mine was fine. Now these grip inserts are pretty cool because, I mean, honestly, even on an aluminum frame pistol, sometimes you want to change grip inserts for bigger or smaller hands. So this is a really well done system here, and it's the exact same texture and shape of the M&P / the Shield line, so it does feel very, very good. Up top here, we have some serrations for glare, and then we have a loaded chamber indicator if you're in all that. Now the gun is only 19 ounces even though it has an aluminum frame, so it is a little bit easier to shoot than something like a P365 or maybe a Hellcat, but it is going to be quite a bit snappier than a full-size gun, so keep that in mind. Now the overall reliability of this gun through the testing, I'm not actually sure how many rounds we have through it. We took it out 3 times, probably somewhere in the area of 500 to 700, I'm guessing. We didn't quite get 1,000 rounds because of some of the stuff I'll be talking about here in a second. But the reliability of the gun was really good, except for user-induced malfunctions. Now, This gun only had one malfunction throughout the entire course of testing. That actually happened during the first shots with remanufactured ammo, which is probably a little bit too light for the gun to function. Oh, now we had a malfunction. Very common, so I'm not going to blame that on the gun. But the user-induced malfunctions were crazy.
Nope, I did it too, apparently. Or I fucked it up.
What the hell? Let me look.
Oh, wasn't seated all the way.
Yeah, so Smith & Wesson puts those cheesy fucking spacers in their grip. Yeah, that thing. And sometimes that causes the mag not to seat. Well. And the malfunction that we continued to see was after we pull the trigger, fire the first round, we would have trigger freeze. We would fail to disengage the trigger all the way. What the shit? We have a failure? What the fuck's going on with that trigger? Doesn't want to reset. Fucking trigger. And as you can see there, it looks like I'm resetting the trigger and pulling it again, resetting the trigger and pulling it again. And now my muscle memory is such because I have shot thousands and thousands of rounds through 2011 pistols. And this is where a 2011 pistol should reset right here. This is where a common pistol should reset right here. But with the Smith & Wesson CSX, you not only have to reset the trigger, but you have to reset the trigger safety. So you have to take your trigger finger all the way off the trigger and then run the trigger again. So we'll cock it here and I'll show you what I mean. Pull the trigger, release, nothing happens, release the trigger safety, then you can pull the trigger. That to me defeats the entire idea of the gun altogether. And the reason why I say that is because single action pistols with a manual safety can be a liability. First off, they're different battery arms than what most people are accustomed with. I love them because I grew up shooting them. Don't get me wrong, they are amazing. But the real advantage that you get out of a single action 1911, 2011 CZ design, anything that's single action generally is you get an incredibly light, crisp trigger that resets very quickly. And what a fast, short reset does for you, it increases the rate of fire that you can achieve with your booger hook. So the shorter distance that you have to reset, the faster you can get there, right? That's why people use 2011s in competition. It isn't just because the trigger's light, it's because the trigger resets in a very short length of travel, allowing you to get crazy rates of fire. And I really wanted this gun because of that. Now, because of this trigger safety, you defeat that advantage. So what you have here is essentially the disadvantage of the single action design with a disadvantage of having a striker-fired trigger. So I'm a little confused at what the purpose of this is, and I say that because the trigger safety is not a bad thing. But in conjunction with the manual safety, it seems a little redundant to me, to be honest with you. I don't know why I have to defeat this safety and then defeat this safety for the gun to work. It should be just this safety or this safety. Pick one and go with it. I think that they tried this as a first run to kind of see what people thought, and that's why I'm probably going to title this video A Good Start, because there's a lot of really good ideas with this gun executed poorly. Now, the other thing that I didn't particularly like about the gun was going to be the overall weight of the trigger as well. And the reason why I mentioned that before we get into accuracy, because it definitely affected accuracy. It was a very accurate gun, especially for a smaller gun, don't get me wrong. But it would have been a lot more accurate without a 7.5 pound trigger pull. Now, on Smith & Wesson's website, I can read it for you right now. It literally says, flat face trigger with integrated trigger safety for consistent trigger placement. Single action for a light, crisp trigger. Pull for accurate shot placement. So they even advertise on their website that it has a light single action trigger for better accuracy. The problem is it doesn't have a light single action trigger. It has a 7.5 pound trigger, according to my super awesome whiz bang trigger gauge over here. Now, I also measured the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield Plus, which I think is the gold standard of carry. I'm certainly not hating on Smith & Wesson because this is obviously, in my opinion, the best Micro 9, and they make that as well. And a lot of the ideas that went into this came from this. Now, one thing they did really well with the Shield Plus is that they introduced a better flat face striker fired trigger in this. Now, I measured the trigger in the M&P Shield Plus, and it broke at 6 pounds. So tell me how the hell this is 7.5 pounds single action, and this is only 6 pounds with a striker fired gun. I feel like that was a huge fail on Smith & Wesson's part, because again, that really is the selling point for me for this gun. Why would I get a more difficult battery of arms for a shittier trigger when I can just get the damn Shield Plus? That being said, I've heard a lot of people like this, but I've also heard a lot of people did not like this, so I would prefer in the future if Smith & Wesson were to release this gun with a lighter trigger pull that has no trigger safety, and I'd buy like 10 of these bad boys. But they haven't, so I haven't. Now, getting an accuracy, it was still really good because the trigger isn't bad, and on top of that, the sights are pretty fantastic. The ergonomics of the gun feel really well as well. I like the fact that they have the grip insert here so you can change the size. I like the fact that it has a longer beaver tail. However, I was still getting a good bit of slide bite. I got some vicious slide bite right there.
Uh-oh.
When I choked up, see that? That's a real problem. Little guns. As you can see here, my hand really does envelop the gun because the gun is really small. When people see this, they're like, aluminum frame micro-9, how small could it be? It's pretty freaking small. As you can see from here, it's still on par with like one of the old Colt 380s or a slight bit bigger than maybe the SIG 938, somewhere along that size, but then imagine you have a double stack magazine, which is a big advantage. Now again, I'm not hating on this gun because it does have double the capacity of some of those guns. However, those guns do have a better trigger than this gun, and considering most engagements are somewhere between 2 and 5 rounds, probably a little bit more or less than that depending on what you're dealing with. You have to understand that it's an average. Sometimes you need 15 rounds, but sometimes you only need 2. But the reality is that the first rounds coming out of the magazine being the most accurate is certainly a selling point. So I do have an issue with that. Now, I don't like the fact that you also have to change your battery of arms to make this gun work well, because since I have to lift my finger all the way off the trigger in order to reset the gun, it feels different and more awkward than any other gun that I've ever shot, which again induced those trigger freeze malfunctions consistently and made me feel very not warm and fuzzy about carrying the gun. I bought this initially with the concept of carrying the gun, and because it has those trigger freeze issues, there's no way in hell I would ever do so. That being said, if you own one of these and you like the way the trigger works, obviously carry the gun, because other than the user-induced malfunctions, this gun worked great. And if you're familiar with the trigger, you like the trigger, and you can make it accurate, then by all means, again, carry the gun. One of the issues I have with making these videos is I get a sample size of one, and my opinions are my opinions alone. My experience is my experience alone. And that's one of the things you have to keep in mind with watching these videos, is that watching YouTube video reviews are great, but you still have to interact with the firearm yourself in order to decide whether or not you like it. I dislike this because of my experience with 1911s, 2011s, and the fact that I know that there are guns for similar size and weights with better triggers, faster, and more accurate for me personally. That being said, this might be the perfect gun for you. Overall, I think a 19-ounce double stack 9mm with a single action design is a really good start. I think it's a good gun overall. However, I do think it has a few quirks, but coming in for the $500 to $600 price tag with an all-metal frame, I think Smith & Wesson really has something going on here. And if this is just the first generation with a whole lot more to come with a few changes, I think not only this gun could make quite the splash, but I think it could be one of the serious contenders for concealed carry on the market. I think people like a manual safety when they first start off. I think a lot of people are still in love with the 1911 and 2011. I obviously am, and I know many, many people who are as well. And if they would come out with a version of this gun without that trigger safety, I would carry this in a heartbeat. That being said, they haven't yet, but I'm looking at you, Smith & Wesson. If you do so, I'll absolutely love it. But until then, this is just another miss in my personal opinion. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.